Hello, everybody, and welcome to Zero Shot, the AI podcast without the hype. I'm Llew Jury, the Managing Director of Advancer, and as always, I'm joined by the one and only James Gauci, the CEO of Cadent. G'day, James. How are you?
G'day, Lou. Not too bad, mate. How are you?
I'm really well. And hello to listeners all over the world. We've got listeners everywhere, don't we now, James? It's quite astonishing.
I'm really pleasantly surprised with how we're going, and our listenership map is lighting up all over the place. So yeah, I'm really pleased with the fact that our message is resonating, and hopefully we're bringing some value to the audience for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And if you've been following us, and you probably know that we've been working our way through 2026 and the AI landscape, and the governance and the risk and the human shift and all the changes that happen, and with agentic AI and AGI from the last episode, it's been quite astonishing what we've been covering in these episodes. We're up to episode 16, and we're going to look today at one of the most misunderstood spaces of AI right now, and we're talking about image and video generation, aren't we? So we're going to separate actually what's reality and what we see out there from a very good demo, because there's a few of those, James.
Yeah, 100%. And we need to kind of unpack synthetic media a bit, because there are pros and cons to this kind of stuff throughout society, and there are right and less right ways of deploying it in businesses as well. The main risk, of course, when you're using these kinds of things, especially for advertising, is the risk of seeming inauthentic. And as we've kind of touched on a few times on the pod, we're increasingly being asked to be more human, not less human. So yeah, let's have a look at what's production ready in 2026. We'll talk through the Midjourneys and the Dalis and the Fireflies and VO, Runway, Ants, etc. But it'll be great to kind of identify what still needs a specialist in the room and what every business needs to know before they touch any of these tools. So let's get into it, eh?
Sounds great. James, did you want to give a shout out to our sponsor?
Sounds good. Before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by Cowboy. And look, here's the thing. When we talk today about people actually adopting AI, one of the biggest blockers I see in organizations is that people just don't know how to prompt properly. And they open Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, they type a vague kind of input, and they get a subpar result, and they decide that, they kind of rage quit on AI. They're like, it's not for me. But Cowboy fixes that. They've got this agentic prompting feature. You can build out a full prompt for your workflow before you put it into your agent tools of choice. So if you want your people to stop avoiding AI and start getting results from it, go to promptcowboy.ai. It's a genuinely practical tool for teams going through exactly the kind of shifts we're talking about today, isn't it, Luke?
100%, James, 100%. And super important. Should we roll into the tool and what's new for the week? James, what's been on your radar this week as your new tool of the week?
Look, it's not a new tool, but it is a tool that we're increasingly using, especially in this landscape, and it's called ComfyUI. So it's an open source deployable synthetic media generator, you might call it. It's kind of like using a video processing tool or a rendering pipeline or a CAD workflow pipeline, except you're prompting AIs and you're chaining AIs together to spit out kind of synthetic media in audio or video or pictures or what have you. So we've been using that on a couple of projects, mainly for research projects for universities. But yeah, it's been a really interesting tool to get to grips with, and one that's been around the traps for a little while. So I recommend people have a look at it, because it is one of the best ways to get high fidelity synthetic media going. How about you, Lou? What's your tip/tool of this week?
Oh, there's heaps, isn't there? And it just comes at a rate of knots. Have you seen that one that's AI slop backwards? It's aislop.ai, backwards, and it's amazing. But I'm not going to talk about that one. I've been trying that out in the last 24 hours. I've been doing a lot of Claude, James. I've been training a lot of people in Claude. I've been doing a lot of skills development in Claude. And when I say skills, the tool that really supercharges Claude, which is now, of course, one of the leading frontier models that we all have started to move across to, is when you build skills and you build them properly, you can supercharge your experience. So there's a little skills section under, I think it's customized on Claude, and I've been training people in that. And I built a CFO one this week, and I was having a look at how my financial year has been going, and I started asking my CFO these questions and uploading balance sheets and profit and loss and all of these really cool things from a business perspective, and it spat out board level documents that I was just super impressed with. So I've been using that. I've been training a lot of my clients in that, in Claude, project skills, all the connectors, all the basics to just get the most out of just what comes out of the box for $30 a month. So, yeah, that's me. And yeah, should we roll into segment one and the landscape and what exists and what works and what is still a bit of a smokescreen in this whole world of visual AI? James, what's the first thing you want to chat about? And maybe we start at the Super Bowl even, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we saw the first fully AI generated ads start to pop
Yeah.
up in the last 12 months, and there were a lot of people who were excited and interested by that, but there were probably an equally large group of people who were put off by that and surprised by that. Not least of which the advertising industry, who are full of creative people who make their livings out of creating these kinds of ads and aspire to create the types of Super Bowl ads that have become famous in the past. And so it makes me kind of wonder what the right balance is here, because there's no question about the efficiencies and business value that we can get out of these tools, but there's an equally important question about people's purpose and people's place in that landscape. And the creative industries are, I think it's fair to say, one of the most impacted by the content generation AI systems that we've seen propagate so quickly throughout society over the last 3 years, Llew.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you? What do you think?
Oh, look, I think Midjourney was the first OG, wasn't it? It was the one that sort of has been around the longest and put it into the hands of the average person that really wanted to use visual AI in their workforce or in their retail environment. And I think that there's been a massive explosion. I think going back to that Super Bowl ad component, it always starts the innovation in this sort of thematic across mass scale and mass market adoption is, I come back to the Super Bowl because it's often where the big budgets are, right? And we saw that with CGI over the years, like the last 20, 25 years, with, a lot of the Super Bowl ads being produced with CGI being used. And then, basically there's an element of humor in there. So you're blending in humor and CGI to sort of get across the great Doritos ads and things like that. I think, we've been sort of trained and conditioned through the last 15, 20 years of advertising and marketing, where they've had the larger budgets from the bigger agencies in the world. And I think that the first time this year that we saw that come out in the Super Bowl ads sort of showed that shift, that it was actually okay to do fully synthetic visual AI and use AI to actually produce all that with the stable diffusions and the DALL-E 3s and all those sort of platforms that now are being adopted by those large enterprise audiences. But very quickly, within a matter of months, we've seen the Soras, the VOs, the C Dances, the C Dance 2.0s really come out as tools that puts it in the hands of us. And then, that's going to reverse engineer and come from the bottom up, that synthetic media is actually going to, and is already starting to appear on general influencers' content marketing strategies on social media channels. So within a matter of months, we've gone from big multi-million US dollar production with the Super Bowl ads into things you can do now for $70 on Higgsfield using CDance 2.0 as a model, and do it in a weekend with a bit of nano banana. And someone who's a bit creative can actually generate that. So it's going from demo to production ready very, very quickly is the key thing I'm seeing. What about Sora, James? Because OpenAI tried to do it with Sora, and they're out there in the retail market, and they've had to sort of pivot their whole strategy from the mass market, the consumer market, across to enterprise to try and catch Anthropic. So Sora was a bit of collateral damage, wasn't it?
Yeah, my take on that is essentially that Sora seemed to be a tool for gathering data for OpenAI more so than a fully fledged tech product. And I don't think they struck the right balance of delivering value to people and in order to get that value back. Like, we think about the freemium model or the kind of free model of digital products that Google pioneered all those years ago, and Facebook still kind of propagates, which is that if it's free, then you're the products. Like, they get your data, they're able to then use that data for their own purposes and repackage it and productize it and sell it to advertisers. Whereas for OpenAI, Sora for them was a way to get access to essentially human supervision for their video model. But I just never saw it cut through in the way that other high profile digital products have and arguably need to at the consumer level in order to justify its continued existence.
Agreed.
And the signal that I seemed to be getting from the noise was that, yeah, that was a cool little prototype project, similar to the way that Google sometimes bubbles up with a prototype project that looks cool for a moment, then goes away. Like I think Firebase Studio went the way of the dodo recently as well, which was their vibe coding tool. And that to me is a similar kind of thing, except for OpenAI, they just don't have the pockets to make these kinds of high profile mistakes like Google does.
That's right.
So it seemed to be a sign that OpenAI were falling in their sword on that one a little bit and kind of ceding the ground because Google just caught up so quickly, and now the open models have just totally eaten their lunch.
And OpenAI have really focused on, their GPT 5.5 release, and they've focused on the enterprise seats. They're going for those, the targeting, for example, enterprise customers with 1,000 seats or more. They don't want a license of Sora appearing on the left side of their enterprise version of ChatGPT. James, I suppose from a commercial standpoint, the ROI case needs to be addressed, right? With this whole image and video generation, whether you're a small business, whether you're an enterprise business. Should we talk about the ROI case? Because it's been around for a while where, for example, you used to get a photographer in, they'd bring in all their lights, you'd hire them for a day, they'd get the light box out, you'd go, right, shoot that product, video record this, and this. And it would be a sort of a program and a package that you'd actually do, and they do some retouching and then send through all of that. I think there's a bit of a false economy, James. I think there's a false economy still. And we sort of did this last week with AGI and agentic AI. Are we here for AGI? Are we into singularity? Similar thing to visual AI. I just think there's a bit of a false economy that you can replace what I just described from that photographer coming in and doing, all of that wonderful work. You can, basically, I actually think we've got to work out where the ROI actually occurs for the business from a human perspective and a brand perspective, and how it works in with your workflow and your workforce. Because you can actually end up burning pretty big budgets, right, James, if you get it wrong.
Yeah, I still fall into this camp of being a big advocate for the blending of traditional process management with the addition of AI capability enhancement. And I believe still that that's where the ROI is. I'm yet to see a fully compelling case of, like, for example, the AI CEO and board that kind of lives in your browser and it just runs your whole business for you. Like, that hasn't really caught fire yet. And even
100%.
my own personal attempts to build a system like that have fallen apart because you still need to have an understanding of what good governance looks like in order to make something like that work. And in a similar way, like, you look back at the creative industries, and what often seems like a disorganized process is usually, especially in high performance creative environments, just very, very high chemistry, high interaction, high bandwidth environments
Yeah.
where an outsider looking in has no idea what's going on, but somehow there's some magic that happens and beautiful things get output at the other end. And I think that that's where the magic might lie still, because it requires human understanding of AI tools in order to get the most creative and most impressive and most acceptable to the human eye outputs. And so I think that the ROI case for that is really, what's the best balance of human augmentation and human AI collaboration that's going to yield the maximum ROI, because it's not going to be all one or all the other. It's going to be somewhere in the middle, and it's going to require getting the people who traditionally and probably right now are saying, look, I don't want to use AI in my work, getting them in the room and actually finding the middle ground and saying, okay, we all want to succeed and we still need to remain competitive. What are the best ways that we can do that? And what are the elements of your role and the job generally that can be improved or changed in a way that will be acceptable to you, that will still allow us to remain competitive? Or are we going to be relegated to the heritage arts side of things? And it's happened before, like opera, very, very popular in the 1700s, not so popular now, and without deep pockets of philanthropy and government probably wouldn't exist. So it's
Sure.
like, and that's it's a
I like that though, James.
As somebody who's been in the arts, I can hear
Yeah.
all of my arts friends going, James, that is so reductive and BS. Just stop right there. But hopefully that the spirit of that kind of
No,
translates through, even though it's kind of a bit brutal and blunt.
no, 100%. I think opera is actually a really good definition about the blending of creative with an artistic endeavor. And I think you're spot on about the word augmenting. And I think that's the key part of what we're talking about here is the tools are there, but they're great to augment and be that personal assistant that actually helps you speed up your day-to-day job. You're still going to need to bring in the graphic designer, the sound engineer, the photographer, but all of those professions should have an augmentation piece, an extension of them to actually use these tools. And I think it's the same thing that photographers went through about 20 years ago with film into digital cameras. And there was photographers that sort of said, this is too hard, I'm going to leave the industry. And that's perfectly fine. Every single revolution of change, this happens, and there's no difference. I think the other quick thing we need to reflect on here, James, is about brand, the brand story and messaging. That if you go out and do synthetic media, it's a bit like getting AI to write your LinkedIn posts. We can all tell now, can't we? The AI has written that LinkedIn post. It's got a formula, it's got emojis, it's got the ticks, it's got the 3 points or 5 points. And it's got the M dashes often left in there and things like that. So I think people need to understand that when you push out content, use it as renders and backgrounds and things like that. You're still going to need to film humans and be like this pod. Actually, this is real. We're not sort of holograms.
We're not AI yet.
We're not AI yet. Maybe in a couple of episodes, Yenia, that we might get there. But basically, that's what I'm sort of saying. We're humans that are actually doing this pod, and it's very similar. We're producing content. And I think that's a critical message as we roll into the business tools. Should we get into the tools that actually create value, James, and start, go through a bit of a laundry list about some of them that you've been using and actually, workflows that you're actually going through to decide in a business whether you're going to use AI image generation. What would a process look like for a business going through that?
Well, I kind of go back to my AI Governance 101 kind of textbook at this point and go, all right, well, what is our policy here? What is acceptable use in our environment? What is our risk appetite, et cetera, et cetera? And the risks that come with communications technologies like this are a lot of the time reputational, and reputational
100%.
risk is a hard one to quantify. We know when it goes wrong and what it feels like, but before time, it's hard to predict how it's going to positively or negatively affect us. And so you got to take a risk-based approach to these kinds of things and get good at understanding what would be acceptable to our audience, and what is the goal of this particular asset that we're generating. So on one end of the extreme, it might be we're generating a 5-second ad for social media that has the product in it and just a little bit of animation, and we're just going to put it through a simple workflow just to add a little bit of depth and a little bit of sheen and a bit of production quality to that picture that we might already have.
Yeah, rather than using an image, right? Rather than using
an image, exactly, and just leveling it up ever so slightly. We were gonna spend 5 seconds on this ad anyway. Here's that little bit of content. Low risk. Getting it wrong. The chances of getting it wrong are quite low. The impact of getting it wrong is very low. It's a product. It's not a person. It's not a high action scene. It's not a complex kind of subject. So you might go, yeah, tick. That's easy tick. We're not even going to ask for approval on those ones. Conversely, at the other end of the extreme, I'm thinking about some past work that we've done and what we might use, how we might use video in those circumstances. So imagine a heavy industry environment where you're putting together a training video, and the training video, you are assessing whether or not you want to use AI video generation in the production of that training video. And the likelihood of AI getting the generation of training material wrong is quite high.
Yeah.
And the impact could be very high. It could lead to loss of life. It could lead to physical or mental harm. And it's those kinds of scenarios where you have to take a step back and go, okay, this is probably not an appropriate use, or flipping that on its head, what are the appropriate uses of AI in that workflow that are lower risk? So
Yeah.
is it something like using an AI filter on an already high quality piece of imagery or piece of video? And so for me, it's as much about understanding the risk profile of the job that you're doing and the specific use case that you're using it in, as it is about, understanding whether or not it can work. It's more about whether or not it should work in this circumstance.
Yeah, agree. And I think it's generally not a catastrophic moment that occurs. We don't really see news and press going, oh, this business put out, this AI ad, and we're all gonna stop using them. It's normally a bit of a slow burn. It's a bit of a slow
Mm,
brand erosion, isn't it?
mm,
Where you're not doing test and learns, you're not doing A/B split testing, which is about sort of testing one part on one audience and or sorry, one ad on one audience and a different ad on the same audience and seeing which one works better.
mm,
I think that brand erosion, a brand has to start with authentic content
mm,
that AI supports, as you said, and it comes exactly from what you said about high quality imagery, high quality renders. And now I've seen this actually in businesses, and what the savvy businesses are doing is they're getting their library, their body of knowledge that they then put into their corpus, so that can actually be trained within all of the auspices of their MCP as well. So you can
mm,
actually call this up through your RAG and MCPs. And I think that the big thing here is that what they do is they get a headshot, for example. So they'll
mm,
get a headshot and they'll do a high res image of that headshot, and then they'll get AI to do 50 backgrounds. They'll then bring in a render of a facade of a shop front or a studio or somewhere like that, and then put that headshot using AI across the top of it. And
mm.
that's really good because you've got two high res images that actually can be layered on top. Those aesthetics that you basically see are real. The cost savings here, James, are real as well. And the time savings. I've seen marketing managers who are just sitting there inundated with changes. And what they're often having to do is, do Canva type approaches to doing manual changes to these images and things like that.
Yeah.
I think this is the game changer. And this is where Canva AI is heading for imagery. This is where most of these platforms are heading, like the Adobe Firefly and ones like that, that basically allow marketing managers to say, look, I need to take Llew Jury's headshot and put it onto 50 facades. And if I had to manually do that, that would be a whole morning's work. But that gets done in, let's call it 20 to 30 minutes, right?
And like that reminds me of something that came out a couple of weeks ago. There's a YouTube channel very popular over a long time called Corridor Crew, and they, for a video, created a machine learning model for doing high quality cropping and rotoscoping of
Right.
video images, so that you could not hypothetical, it actually reduced the workflow time dramatically. And these guys are not computer science experts or anything. They just kind of followed the steps and did the things and got the assets they needed and stuff like that. And it was, the interesting part about it was that it was their expertise in video and video special effects that allowed them to get the high quality inputs that they could put into the machine learning model so that they could create a highly effective machine learning model for rotoscoping. And it was just a bit of a full circle moment for me. And you could see it was a bit of a full circle moment for them as well, because they've got like AI debunking videos where they watch all this kind of AI slop and go, oh yeah, that's AI, that's BS, blah, blah, blah. But for them, they've almost accidentally created the world's leading rotoscoping tool. And
Super cool.
injecting something like that into a workflow has instant value. Like it just performs better. They open sourced it. It's free. It's unbelievable. But I think like that's one of the reasons why they were so successful at that, and why a lot of organizations are successful with AI generated media, is because they have access to their own libraries of high quality content, Lou. And the copyright question is something that a lot of businesses are kind of glossing over a little bit. Like how real is that risk, and what should companies be doing about that right now?
I was about to ask you that because I know that you know that as well. I'll give it a crack, but because I'm hearing there's cases and some settlements and things like that happening right now. And, we've seen that happening with the LLMs training on journalistic content.
Mm,
There's New York Times lawsuits out there and things like
Mm,
that going on around how the LLMs did it. So businesses need to watch their copyright and make sure it's commercially safe. So,
mm,
most open source models will have, like the Midjourneys and the Dalis and things like that. They have content that you can actually use in your commercial work, but you need to know where the training data comes from. You need to
mm,
know what the license is of that, because you don't want to end up with a situation where you get sued because you're actually using a render with your headshot over the top of it, as I just explained. So you need to really understand the licensing of this. And if you do then push it out to public channels, like on social media or into websites or, flyers and things like that, you need to be really, really careful of where the copyright came from and whose copyright is it. And there is things going on right now. James, have
mm.
you heard of anything, seen of anything? Because I'm very interested in this, and I want to make sure small business especially doesn't just go down the pathway and it comes unstuck for them.
Look, it's a super opaque environment and deliberately so. Like the reason why it's hard to answer this question is because we haven't worked out a standardized way and a regulated way of reporting the provenance of AI models at all. And
Mm.
it's something that the AI industry has actively pushed away. On the contrary, that they lobby in this country for the relaxation of copyright rules and quite unabashedly. And that's because they want to reduce and this is just being purely pragmatic and factual about the whole thing. They want to reduce their liability as a business that they're going to have legal issues in a kind of a developed economy like Australia. So I understand it from a business perspective. Do I agree with it? No. But when it comes to kind of being good at governing for this, it's it's having stated rules and stated processes and procedures internally to your business. And it starts with an AI policy. There is a bit of a get out of jail free card with this, which is product designed by the tech companies where they say, look, our training data is proprietary and we will never show it to you. The end. That like
Yeah.
they don't want or need any more assistance to become transparent when they can just say no, it's proprietary, even though it's demonstrably true that they've gone and used copyrighted works in the production of their frontier models. So for small and medium businesses, I would say just have a reasonable policy in place and reasonable processes that control for this kind of thing, and you will be fine. And that will free you up to make more confident decisions and have less of a cognitive load about, but what if the government decides to turn its heels on AI and et cetera, et cetera. If you've got a defensible policy position, it reduces the vast majority of the exposure to liability that you might have had. And that's not immediately obvious because of how opaque everything is. But on the flip side, we've got watermarking as a potential option for AI generated content. We've got standards that are being promoted for tracking provenance of digital media assets throughout the economy now. But I haven't seen yet, and I could be wrong, but I haven't seen yet one of the regulators come out and say, this is the standard that we're adopting in our country. And if you don't comply, you will be subject to X enforcement. So
Yes, it's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? It's going to be interesting to see where it goes and what happens with the whole copyright. And it leads into our final segment, which is about risk and the
mm,
deepfakes and the trust layers. Because you mentioned governance there, and I think there's not a lot of governance around that. Just a quick tip before we talk about some of these final areas. I think my thesis and my hypothesis around this is, how we got iStock and we've got Pexels and we've got
mm,
all those stock platforms that we always use as images. We're going to start seeing the AI, if not already. I think there is already ones where you can actually get AI generated content on there
mm,
that basically allow you to download that and use that as a production ready asset. So I think most businesses use those free platforms that are sort of Creative Commons and license free, or it's a Creative Commons license, so it's free to use.
mm,
So yeah, I think that's where we're heading. So let's get into the deep fakes and stuff like that, and
mm.
maybe dive into, if you're a 50-person business, James, and you've got a bit of a governance policy. Do you actually now go and open up your AI policy and go, hey, we're going to add a new paragraph in, and everybody needs to be trained on this? So what would be the things, really quickly, just to round off this governance chat that you had before? What would be the things you need to decide? You need to have decided in that policy before you deploy any of these tools. Just 2 or 3 points there that you'd say, put that in your AI policy?
Yeah, I would make sure that firstly you define the fact that AI generated video and images and AI generated content is well defined within your policy. Definitions are the glue that holds a good governance framework together, because you need to know and scope what you're talking about in order to govern it effectively. So when you have your definition of AI and your definition of AI systems in your AI policy, it should be broad enough but scoped enough to include content, including visual, audio, video, etc. So that's point number one. Point number two, it cascades down from that, which is when you're going through the impact assessment process or the risk assessment process, that you are considering the type of tool that is being used and the unique risks associated with the tool. So reputational risk is one of those, but there are a range of kind of information security style risks, like we're generating content, but is it consequential content? Like, is this going to face millions of people? And are we giving it a proportional level of scrutiny? So those are probably the two main areas. Make sure that video and audio and imagery is in scope, and also ensure that you have unique aspects that control for the type of media that you're generating in your policy, or in the procedure is probably the better place for that, or some definitions that sit outside of the policy itself. But having some guidelines around video specifically would be very helpful.
I think, yeah, and that leads me to a point about, is it a production decision or is it a brand decision? Should it be at the board level? And absolutely, the CEO should know and the board should know what's going on in the organization at all times in terms of, not it's the noses in, fingers out, isn't it? You don't need to always know everything that's happening, but it's a really important one that your production people, your graphic designers and your producers and all of that are basically taking it from a production decision, not a brand decision, because the brand decision is what you stand for, what your relationship with your audience, your customers, the trust signals that you're building out there in the market, that comes first. Brand is really important. Once you've made that decision, then you can ask whether AI sits inside or outside that. Does it work for us as an organization or doesn't it? And for a lot of brands, AI handles the volume and the human content handles the moments that really matter. That's the critical piece. I think that the moments that matter are launch campaigns because they're human-based, CEO communications because they're human-based. You're not going to have your CEO doing his or her Christmas message, that's generated by AI. I think you'd be quite foolish. That would be not done the next year. That wouldn't be repeated the next year. But wherever anything that's about authenticity and that's load bearing, you don't want to get that wrong. So I think that's a really critical thing. Let's just quickly talk about some of the deepfakes. Are we seeing many deepfakes now? We talked about the Hong Kong board with voice AI.
Yeah, and I have to make a correction there for those who listened to that episode. It was actually 25 million. I apologize.
Not 50?
Not 50 million, but it was 25. Yep. And it wasn't the CEO, it was the CFO. I did have some lapses in memory there, but thank you for those who pointed that out.
There we go. Awesome. Thank you. Yes, appreciate it. So deepfakes, video generation tools are now good enough that, a non-technical actor like a CFO can convincingly impersonate content, right? So similar to our Hong Kong, that event. Every organization, James, using video for communications and verification and trust building needs a policy, right? So in terms of the deepfakes, what we're talking about, of course, is, people and the faces and the voice and everything like that, coming across, and video being the production that's producing that asset. Yeah. Where are we going with this? What are we seeing in the cyber world? What do we need to be avoiding and aware of? What's happening?
From an AI security perspective and an information security perspective, we're now entering this new world of having to two-factor authenticate normal human interaction, which is just absolutely absurd and bizarre and feels weird.
Did you come up with that? That's a great call. Two-factor authenticate human interaction.
I haven't read it anywhere, but it is the way that I thought about it, like
on this pod, James Gauci. It's like vibe coding. And he's got a bit of a cough, so I don't want to make him cough too much. But that's awesome, mate. Two-factor authenticate. the human. And like, keep going.
Yeah,
That's
so
yeah, really
so
good.
the upshot there is like the ways that we've become a little bit accustomed to checking critical communications on text and email and using a second channel and saying, "Hey, I just got that email from you to transfer that $10,000." Just checking that A, that was you, and B, you still want me to do that. And you using Slack for that, or using a text message for that, or whatever, just to make sure that that's actually what should be done. And that is now what we need to do for a video call. Anywhere there's a digital intermediary between you and the other person, it and there's a consequential action that needs to be created, more than just being informed or consulted on something, but actually a directive. We now have to start becoming used to double checking. And
Yeah.
because the reality is the tools like ComfyUI put in the hands of anyone with an internet connection the ability to generate convincing deepfake synthetic media. It's not easy to do convincing synthetic media yet, but it will be. You know,
It's close.
we've gone from what's his name, the Men in Black guy. His name escapes
Oh,
me.
Will?
Will Smith, far out.
Yeah.
How could I not remember Will Smith? But we've gone from Will Smith eating spaghetti and it looking like a hot mess to Will Smith eating spaghetti and it looks like Will Smith eating spaghetti.
Yeah.
It's like stock image of him.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
happened.
that's happened within the space of just a couple of years. Imagine what the next couple of years is going to be like. And the smart businesses will be training their people. It's mostly training and awareness behaviors that need to be instilled in people that will not only keep the company safe, but will keep your people safe as well. And they can then become the kind of advocates in their personal circles for, hey, grandma, just because you're on a video call with somebody doesn't mean that it's actually that person. Like just advocating for those kinds of ideas and keeping the broader community safe as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good one about, before we dive into the takeaways, if you're a business listening to this today, and probably need to ask yourself, what do you actually need to do to decide before you use any of these tools? Are they being used? Is the production owning them rather than brand? Is your brand being affected if you actually do publish some of these things? And this leads me into the takeaways from today's pod, James. And I think the big thing for me was about that trust piece, because this is happening faster than many business leaders realize. And there's a lot of business leaders coming to me and saying, hey, the opportunity is massive. I can save a lot of money. How can I build up my new marketing platforms with all my assets and body and knowledge, and then just have AI doing all the work of a graphic designer, for example? So there's cost advantages, speed advantages, and scale as well. But there's risk and copyright exposure coming, and brand trust erosion coming, and some of those deepfake problems that you just mentioned as well. So the businesses that win aren't necessarily going to be the ones that move fastest, is probably the key message that I'm taking out today. So yeah, James, what was your key takeaway?
Key takeaway for me is that there's huge value to be realized here. There's no question. And it's really going to, like, the businesses that succeed, kind of to your point, Lou, are the ones that are going to do it in a way that's consistent with their existing values, their existing audience, their existing kind of purpose as an organization, and that they're authentic to all of those things. And if you're a high trust brand or a high trust organization, it's very easy to break that trust. And that's not just with synthetic media. That's in any circumstance. So, transparency is a great way of offsetting that, and good governance is another way of offsetting that. Yeah, the key takeaway for me is that the high value, high trust brands have a lot to gain, but they should take a considered approach. And that wasn't what I expected to get out of today. I thought I'd be like shooting to the moon on the back of AI generated ads and stuff. But I think we've come to a bit more of a sober view, Lou,
A
which has been
reality check,
nice.
right? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been good, James. A reality check. I think the other key word that I got from yourself was augmentation. Augment these tools in your day to day. So yeah, look, next episode, James, it's going to be exciting. Next episode, we're doing something we've never done before on the Zero Shot podcast. We're going to actually turn the camera on ourselves and hold the mirror up, aren't we? James and I are going to open up about the businesses behind this podcast. So what James is doing at Cadent and what we're doing at Advancer, and where we started, what, our backgrounds, the moments that shaped the businesses, and what we got wrong, what we've learned, how we use AI in our own businesses, and also what our clients are doing, like giving some real life examples and how you can apply it to your business. So it's going to be honest, it's going to be personal. And if you ever wondered who's behind it, tune in next week for sure.
That's going to be great, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your story, Llew, in this format, because it kind of forces you to think in a little bit more of a condensed way. How can I put that into a nutshell?
Right.
So it'll be really cool to have that conversation with you, mate.
I'm sure Yenny is going to produce some great prompters. She's very good at provoking the best stuff out of the two of us, isn't she? So, I think it's going to be awesome.
And sales-free zone, right? Like we're just going to tell stories.
100%.
But look, thanks to Prompt Cowboy, the team over there. Like they're just such a rock for us as our sponsor. If today's session made you think about how you can actually get your team using AI properly, make sure you go and check out their agentic prompting feature, like we were talking about. It's really practical. It's hands-on. It's a great starting point to not only get some great outputs out of your AI, but learn about how these systems work and how to generate better content yourself after having used that tool. So trot on over to promptcowboy.ai and try it out today.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you for joining the Zero Shot podcast today. And that's it for today's session. We're building Zero Shot for the builders, the skeptics, the strategists who are actually moving the needle out there in your industry. So this is for you. But we just don't want to talk at you. We want to actually get all that feedback about the Hong Kong, deepfakes and things like that. We want to get all the comments back. So we want to actually see who's in the room, and whether you're a CEO in Sydney or a developer in Austin, Texas, or an operator anywhere between, your perspective keeps this pod flowing and anti-hype. So thank you very much. You can find us on LinkedIn. Search for James, Gauci, Cadent, Llew Jury, Advancer, or follow the zeroshot.com.au podcast. James, we're on Spotify, Apple, we're on all the different channels.
YouTube,
everything, right?
OnlyFans.
Not yet.
Not yet. We haven't monetized to that extent just yet, but
leave
us a review, drop a comment, send us a topic. We read all of it. We really do. And just before we part today, big shout out to Yenny Alodorada, our producer, who is always just behind the scenes, making sure that this is a well-oiled machine, and we absolutely couldn't do it without her. So thank you very much, Yenny.
Thanks, Yenny.
So stay sharp, stay sovereign, and we'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everybody.
Cheers.